No,
Took me a minute.
I didn't. How did you do?
Reconvening. And we are first in a public hearing on the budget for fiscal year 22-23. And the first order of business is to call for public comment on the 22-23 budget specifically.
I have not received it.
And nothing online either.
Okay. Then I call this public hearing on the budget to a close, and we'll move in now to our regular meeting. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you.
Seconded.
Thank you. Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Yes. Any opposed? None. All right, agenda passes.
Is video going out, guys? Is video going out? Okay, just making sure.
Are we on a delay in case I say a swear word or something? All right, moving on to approval of the consent agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion of the consent agenda? Terrific. All in favor, say yes or aye.
Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Terrific. All right. Citizens' comments. Have we any citizens' comments?
I have not received it.
Thank you, Karen. Nothing online, I'm assuming. All right. Oh, it's so bizarre to see. Now I'm in a Black Mirror episode.
Oh, please. Which one, Jim?
That's my clone over there. There's nothing more horrifying than seeing yourself on video while you're in real life.
Let's pause for just a moment because I think
We're having some technical
let's take
difficulties.
just a moment here, if you'll pardon me.
Only you. That's. No matter who else is talking.
Ever
it will be
receding
Jim.
hairline.
Okay, there we go. All right. You may proceed.
Great. Jumbotron. Okay, that moves us on to financial reports.
Okay.
With Eli.
So financial reports begin on page 13 with the check register. And if you look in your packet on the page numbered 17, just to touch on a couple highlights. So our cash decreased $1.2 million to $6.8 million on hand as of April 30th. That's as expected this time of year. Also, as of April 30th, we had received $17.9 million. That's 100.3% of our annual budgeted tax receipts. When we make that estimate, when we set that budget amount, it is a projection. So depending on how things go, it often will come in more. I expect, Cindy was telling me that we often will get some delinquencies in May and June. So there may be more revenue coming in. So that might finish even as high as 101%. We'll see how that comes in once those checks actually arrive. But all good news regardless. Fund balance activity, our fund balance increased from $5.7 million to $5.85 million. That's again, this is the time of year when those continue to increase. If you turn to page 18, revenue to our total cash receipts through April 30th equal $18.2 million, which is just as expected. And our expenditures so far total $13.5 million. Of that, $580,000 has not been paid yet. That means it's been encumbered but not yet paid. So we've ordered something, but the invoice hasn't yet arrived. And as of April 30th, we have about $500,000 in prepaid expenses. Those are things that we pay for up front and then we receive over the course of the year. Magazine subscriptions is the easiest one to understand. We have almost all of those come from a single vendor, and we pay them up front to the beginning of the year for all the magazine subscriptions. But there's also database subscriptions and things like that that work the same way. And then revenue over or under, our current revenues are 82.5% of the approved budget, which is right on track for this time of year. Current expenses are 74% of the approved budget. So that means we are spending slower than the revenue is accruing, which is how we like it to be. Our actual cash receipts, 99.6% of budget. Actual cash is 75.2% of budget. So that's all working just fine. That's exactly as expected this time of year. If you want to take a quick look at page 20, the statement of revenues and expenditures, we can see we got more penal fines this year than we expected. That's come in at 134% of budget already. That's one of those things. Those are literally any speeding or traffic tickets that are given by the state within our district. So that is very unpredictable, hard to know how much that's going to come in. Interest income, again, because of what's going on in the bond market, we just are not receive any interest income essentially from our investments this year because most of them are in bonds and bonds are losing value. Library fines, fees, and other. You can see in April, we took in $7,400, which is more than we normally do. And that's because all the collection agency stuff started happening in April. And we've had very small number of people really upset about that. It's gone very well. I was expecting much more uproar than we have received. So I always like to be in that position. And then our rental revenue, you can see, is right on the money. That is exclusively the rent from Sweetwater's. That is our only source of rental revenue. And you'd expect that to to be right about 82%, whereas right where it is. Looking at expenditures, again, we are 83% of the way through the year. So any of these that are under 83%, we're spending a little slower than normal. Anything that's over is something to keep an eye on. Salaries and wages, we continue to do pretty well there. We did pay bonuses to all staff. That was paid in May, so it will show up in next month's financials. That was $1,500 pre-tax to all part-time and full-time employees, with the exception of me. And custodial services, that one's running over. We'll look at that one. We've adjusted it a little bit for next year. It's possible that one will need to transfer in for the next year. Another one that's over, software, well, it's not over, but software licenses, it's almost all spent, which is what we expect. That's one that slows down very late in the year. Possible a small transfer could be needed there. Library programming running way under because we haven't done a lot of programming. However, we're going to be catching up on that with Summer Festival starting, as well as there's just a lot of other programs starting to kick off. Repairs and maintenance, you can see, is just a tiny bit over, pretty much right where we'd expect. And capital outlay, again, a little bit over where we would expect at this point of the year, but that's one that is very much big purchase based, and I'm not concerned about that one needing more money over the course of this year. Revenue over expenditures or under expenditures, we are on track at this moment for $1.6 million of surplus at the end of the fiscal year, and that will continue to get a more precise estimate as we get through the next couple months. So that's it for the financial report. Any questions? Okay, thank you very much.
All right, that moves us to executive committee report. We have not had an executive committee meeting, so I have nothing to report. And budget and finance committee.
Yeah, we did have one meeting. We spent the bulk of the time reviewing the almost final draft of the budget and kind of going over a few of the lines. I think there are a few things that have been updated since then where things moved around a little bit that we called out. I think the couple big things to note are things like, and I'm sure we'll talk about this in the approval, but the materials budget is coming more in line with what we're actually been spending. And a few other big changes, but otherwise it looks good. I don't know if there's anything else to really report out. If there's any questions or anything you all want to add. No?
Great. We'll take a closer look. That takes us back to Eli with the library report.
Okay, if you guys can bring up my slides there. All right, so I want to start off today because we've got something that's on the agenda a little bit later. Next slide. This is some data about overdue items. We looked at this a year ago when we were, was it a year ago or was it 2 years ago? Who even knows? But we looked at this a while ago to assess where we were at in terms of if not charging fees, overdue fees, was making a material difference in how long people were waiting for things, which we measure primarily through the percentage of checkouts that are overdue. So we use the same tool, and this is a complicated thing to actually get data on. So the most important thing is that you do it the same way. So we use the same methodology. We have a tool now where we can look at this for any month. And it looks at how many checkouts happened during that month. It does not count the renewals, but of course a renewal can end an overdue fine. So they are in the data set. In April 2021, during that month, there were 170,761 checkouts. Those were made by 13,662 patrons. Now, that's a low number. Like when I compared this back to 2019, that was 24,000 patrons, but it's not that far off because a lot of patrons don't use the library every month. So it's not very uncommon for us to see monthly active users around this scale. So what this chart is comparing is April 2021 to April 2022. So we can see our checkouts are up 25% compared to a year ago. Our active patrons is up 37% compared to a year ago. So we're delighted to see that the patrons are coming back. For the rest of this is just comparing the percentage of the checkouts that were overdue during the month. Okay, so in April 2021, 26% of those 170,000 checkouts were overdue for a week or less, which we basically don't consider overdue at all. right? That's very in keeping with that same percentage here in April 2022. So it's like the majority of overdue things were not anymore, or it's about the same volume of overdueness between 21 and 22. Then if you look at overdue 1 to 2 weeks, 2 to 6 weeks, or 6+ weeks, you can see the percentages are a little different. But most importantly, down here at overdue 6+ weeks, now we have a much smaller percentage of checkouts because we're back to our billing and our collection agency, and we're getting a lot of stuff back. So that overdue 6+ weeks, that's what we actually worry about, because when things go overdue, it can, of course it can be a wait for the next person in line, but what we're mostly concerned with is getting the stuff back, because we really have nothing other than some stern words to get the materials back, right? So we're delighted to see that here in April 2022, only 0.7% of the checkouts were overdue 6+ weeks. So that's a great percentage. We're very happy with this. So what this is showing us is that, yes, there's some impact from overdue fees, but it's not material, and it's really hard to envision this small difference in percentage of items as overdue being worth the amount of pain and suffering and anguish that go with overdue fees. And of course, we hear from patrons every day who still think we charge overdue fees. So they're still out there doing their job, even though they are not even happening anymore. All right, so we'll have an item on the agenda later about policy. We'll have a chance to look at more of that, but I just wanted everyone to see. So next slide, please. So I wanted to give you a heads up on what's happening with AADL and the Ann Arbor Summer Festival this summer. We've got 3 different Kids Rock events. That's June 12th, June 19th, and June 26th. You can see here one of those artists is the Uncle Devin Show, and that'll be Sunday, June 19th at Top of the Park. We're also doing 3 annex events. We're doing a Bob Ross paint-along. We're doing a Pokemon tournament in conjunction with the same night of the screening of Detective Pikachu. That's Thursday, June 16th. We're also doing our world-famous trivia, which is what the person who does those decided to call it. So the world-famous trivia will return to the annex at Top of the Park. And will also be 2 films. Detective Pikachu is one of them. Then, plus, we got a couple other special events. Vibes with the Tribes is a very cool event that started in Detroit with some of the local Anishinaabe communities, and also combining that with hip hop and jazz music. It's a very cool event. We're looking forward to that one. Sidewalk Chalk Day is on the 12th. The library will be judging people's sidewalk chalk creations and giving out prizes to the best in each category. On June 12th, we're sponsoring ADG 7, which is a traditional Korean folk music act. They are really well regarded around the world. I'm very excited to have them here, and we're working with maybe having a lecture or a video with them as well. And then June 21st to 25th is something special at Top of the Park called Canopy. Next slide, please, guys. This is it's from a collective in Detroit called, I'm not sure if they're based in Detroit, called New House, PNEUHAUS. And they make pneumatic inflatable things. And this is pedal-powered inflatable tree canopy. So people have to pedal on the pedals to get the things to inflate. So it's an interactive sculpture. It'll be there on Top of the Park for 5 days. And that's toward the end of June. And that's brought to you by AADL. We're very excited about that one as well. All right, next slide. Of course, it wouldn't be summer without the summer game from AADL, and this is our teaser art that we've been sharing on social. The summer game begins on the last day of school, which is June 10th, and if you go to the next slide, and you as the board get to see this artwork. This is by, I think he's Columbus-based. His name is Andy J. Pizza, is the artist. And this is just a really wonderful, delightful summer game art. It's got all the branches in there. It's got a little something for everyone. So that is coming up, starts June 10th. Next slide, please. Then on June 8th, we have Visions 2022. Visions is finally back. We're very excited about this event. It's the Assistive Technology Fair for basically technology and services for the blind and visually impaired and physically disabled. This is a really great event that actually originated at this library something like 20 years ago, and then it was in the multi-purpose room for a while, and then when the Library for the Blind was doing it for a while, and then when we took the Library for the Blind back over from the county, we brought it back home, and for a while it was at Morris Lawrence out at WCC. And since we moved it downtown, it really exploded. It's a lot easier for people with mobility issues to get here, and it just had a much bigger, more vibrant audience. There'll be lots of service dogs and all kinds of programs and talks. We have people from the National Library Service coming to talk, so it's going to be a very special event. And if any of you are interested in volunteering, we are always looking for sighted assistants who can help people with visual impairments find their way throughout the building. And just let me know if you're interested in that. Next slide, please. Our Fifth Avenue Press author event was yesterday. We released 10 new titles from local authors, including YA, teen fiction, adult fiction, picture books, nonfiction, poetry, anthology, and memoir. And here's the patron who asked us to take her picture because she bought one of everything. She came and she was so inspired, she bought one of everything that we released that day. And if you'll go to the next slide, please, I just want to draw your attention to a couple of yesterday's releases. One thing is we released our first bilingual book, Grandpa Kai in His Garden, which is in both English and Mandarin. That is a really cute, adorable book from a couple of graduate students. That is now available in the collection. The Accidental Engineer is by a guy who had done engineering here through the 60s and the 70s and was never actually an engineer. He worked on the Apollo program, all kinds of very cool stories. I may be the only one on the team who really loves that book, but I love it. It's a very, very nerdy story, and he is not your typical Fifth Avenue Press author. He's not doing it to write a book. He's doing it because he wanted to tell his story and document all of the projects that he was involved with, most of which are not very well documented. What Are You Looking At by Erin Wakeland? This was actually her senior art school dissertation that she decided to turn into a book for Fifth Avenue Press. And it's basically stunty art projects that are really very exciting. One of her projects was she would pick up the Solo cups walking by the frat house on the way home, mend them, and return them to the frat house and say, "These are yours, I fixed them."
Artists are crazy.
Yes. And she did plein air painting at Meyer, all kinds of great stuff. So she did some really fun projects. Wanted to draw your attention to that one.
So good.
And then we also released My Daddy's Not Like Other Daddies, which is a children's picture book about having a trans-masculine parent.
Oh, that's super cool.
Okay, moving on to the next slide, please. All right, so just a couple of social media comments. Here's one about Maribel the Bat. I opened this book. This was one of our Fifth Avenue Press releases from a local librarian. I opened this book to read it and realized it was written by someone in my city and published by our AADL Public Libraries imprint, Fifth Avenue Press. Times like these, I'm glad I'm a librarian on Goodreads because I just stopped and added the book. And then Bring Your Words, which was the anthology that we released yesterday from, I believe, 10 authors. And one of the lead authors said, "We gave Fifth Avenue Press a manuscript and they have given us a real book that is absolutely gorgeous. We all couldn't be happier and we hope you enjoy it too." So that was a great example there. Moving on to the next slide. Just wanted to bring these to your attention. We now have bookmarks at each location. This is picking up on the sort of the branch pride that we've had a lot of people excited about. So now these bookmarks have been out for just a couple weeks and you can collect them all by visiting all of our locations. Moving on to the next one. So this is just a comment from someone. My excitement to get a new library card is an 11 out of 10. So this is post-grad life. Update was just as giddy as I was in kindergarten getting my new library card. This is definitely the time of year when graduate students emerge from their cocoons and discover all that life has to offer.
Is that what the library card looks like now? I have a vintage one, so.
Yes, that is the current library card. If you've got the teal ones, then you're an OG.
I am.
All right. Social media comments, once again, this is someone we planted our indoor plants last week, and we were excited to see them sprout on Monday. Students recorded their observations in journals, and we discussed how different plants have different needs. I'm excited to see what the plants will look like in 6 weeks. A big thank you to the Ann Arbor District Library's free seed program and to the community compost soil from Growing Hope in Ypsilanti. We are about to reopen Seed Sampler for the last batch of spring orders. On Wednesday, that will open, and that will be our last batch of spring orders, and it will be back in the fall. And then just a few more comments. Move on to the next slide. Just some comments from over the desk. I appreciate the library staff and the resources AADL provides. The library computers and internet helped me complete a Coursera project management certificate. I'm continuing to use the computer stations to search for full-time employment. Thank you. It's something that happens here a lot. We don't always hear about it. It's very good to have that feedback from a patron. And then here's someone who stopped at the desk to say, whoever did the seeds did a great job. They all started going right away. Thank you to the Ann Arbor Seed Company for providing us with such excellent stock. All right, next slide. A patron just printed a document to the youth printer off of his Android phone and appreciated the service. This is so cool and fast. Thank you all for offering it. It's great when it works. Then a patron called to renew his items and wanted to pass along his thanks and appreciation for the hard work we do at the library and for helping to keep the sanity during the pandemic and beyond. We hear that a lot too. All right, next slide. Patron just wanted to let us know that she appreciates our attentiveness to patrons and loves the library. This is my favorite place, she said. A call center caller was surprised and happy to see that we have a Narcan vending machine in the library and asked that I pass that along to the administration. Message received. To date, I have received precisely one negative comment about the Narcan machine in the lobby. Patron at Traverwood Branch complimented whoever curates the books displayed on the end shelf end caps. He said he often finds new and interesting topics to read via those. And one last one, we got a negative for you. Just returned from the downtown branch after picking up a hold. Noticed mask needed on front doors. Who started that again? Really, why is that necessary? Please move on, just foolishness. So I did respond to this, and I basically said, well, the sign doesn't say mask needed. It says, please wear a mask. And you will not be asked to leave the library if you choose not to wear a mask. And when they said, please move on, I said, I look forward to doing that when it is actually over. All right. So, and then finally, just so that we don't end on that, here's another positive one. This is from an event partner. Apex is a partner who we have an event coming up with in June. I'm extremely grateful for your enthusiastic support of these presentations. I literally cannot find anywhere else, even U of M, to host public discussions of this research, which I think is essential to share with people, in addition to being interesting and engaging. I think this speaks to the AADL's important place in the community, and I could not be more excited to contribute to that. And we are delighted to be a partner with Apex. They produce amazing events. Okay, and that's it for the library report. Any questions?
There's a lot of joy in there. It's nice to see it.
Yes.
I did ask Eli to talk a little bit about fines, in part because we're going to talk about trying to actually adjust our policy today. And I also, we have been in discussion in our weekly meetings about reimagining this library report so that we can look at some consistent factors over the course of a whole year, in addition to all of this other kind of great programmatic updates and patron feedback that we get. But it's just, I've been trapped in my house for 10 days with COVID, so I'm just out in the world enjoying this wonderful presentation. Any other reflections, thoughts, questions about the report?
Excited for the summer game.
Yeah.
Yeah, next meeting here in this room. we're gonna
Comments,
have-
wall to wall.
Yes.
I thought you had a comment. Okay. Also really great to see the programming lineup that you're working on with the Summer Festival. Terrific partner. All right. We'll move right along to old business and our item of action, which is a resolution to extend the space use agreement with Friends of the Ann Arbor District Library. I was not here at the meeting last month. Did you all look at this?
Yes.
You had a first read of it.
Yes.
And I would just like to appreciate, a lot of folks have been working on this, board members and staff, to essentially revise the agreement and also move Friends operations primarily out to the new warehouse space. So a lot of work has gone into this. I'm going to read the resolution. The resolution to extend space use agreement with the Friends of the Ann Arbor District Library. The board resolves that the president of the Board of Trustees of Ann Arbor District Library be authorized to sign a one-year extension of the space use agreement along with the president of the Board of the Friends of the Ann Arbor District Library. And two, that all resolutions and parts of resolutions that conflict with the provisions of this resolution are rescinded. Can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Let the discussion begin.
Okay, well, the only things that have changed since the last time that we looked at this last month, we took it to the Friends Board, we discussed it with them, and we added a few things based on their questions. There's nothing substantial here. It was mostly them looking for some things we had discussed to be included in the agreement. So one of them is to be specific about that their space at the branches can include shelves or carts, because that may be a cart might make the most sense at the downtown library, particularly because they are interested in retaining both the free shelf and a cart of books for sale. We want to make sure those aren't too close to each other so that people don't get confused about which ones they're supposed to pay for. So we changed that in section 1 to say shelves or carts at library locations. They also wanted their hours of access, routine access, to be in that clause. So it says on, toward the end of section 1.1, FAADL may access the premises from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. weekdays, plus weekend hours by prior arrangement with the library. So that was something they wanted to see in there. That's very easy for us to accommodate. Then, if you skip to sections 3.4, we haven't done one of these yet, so it's a little nebulous where there's a sale where we're having a sale and they're having a sale at the same time. We are doing one in July out at the plaza, which will be their first big bag sale in a long time. But it's also going to be our idle equipment sale, and we're also going to be selling DVDs that have been withdrawn. So we put in there that if they ask us to, because we will be running a cash register for those events anyway, and we already run cash registers for them at all of our locations. If they ask us to at the special sales at the plaza, we would be happy to run one cash register and cash out their items as well. But that's up to them. So it says there in the agreement, the library will also provide, at FAADL request, point of sale service for special sales at the plaza when the library is also offering items for sale. So we are not on the hook for this if we are not offering anything. We wouldn't be there otherwise. We also added parking, 3.5. The library will allow FAADL personnel to park in the plaza parking lot when they are working at the plaza, with the exception of days when the plaza is in use for special public events. And the one other thing is section 3.7 is also new. And this was something we had talked about with them because they've got a very motley assortment of shelving that they've accreted over the years. And so we are offering to them to build them 40 of these new carts that we have built for our own use. It's basically a rolling bookshelf. That we will build them 40, which is enough for them to enclose 3 sides of their space. And that we will construct those for them at our cost and provide them to them for their exclusive use. So that's section 3.7 that was added, and I see that I messed up changing the numbering after that. I have to fix 3.7 to be 3.8, et cetera. But those are the only additions. Everything else is good. Pat McDonald has retired as president of the library board, president of the Friends of the Library Board. And we have 2 new co-presidents, and we will be working with them to sign the agreement. Any questions about any of that?
I'm glad that we're making that explicit about the shelving.
Yes.
Because it would be, let's just dispense of the motley shelves.
I should add that I went to their annual meeting, which was last week,
Yeah.
to describe all of this to their membership and their volunteers. It was a very positive discussion, lots of good questions. I made sure to explain why all this was happening, and it was very well received. And I think we're in a very good spot, and grateful for the support of the Friends and their leadership.
Questions, concerns, comments? We've walked a good path together, and to come to this new agreement and the eventual move, and I think everyone is, the relationship's in a really positive place, and I'm glad for that. All right, if there is no further discussion, we will take a vote, and I'm like, no roll call. All in favor, say yes.
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 Any opposed? There are none. All right, resolution passes. So we will work on getting that final document.
I will have them sign it first.
Great.
And then I will bring it for you.
Terrific. Right. This is moving us to proposed budget resolution. The resolution's on page 35. This is the tiniest of the resolutions this evening. The board resolves as follows. The board approves and adopts the budget for fiscal year ending June 30, 2023 as presented, that all resolutions and parts of resolutions that conflict with the provisions of this resolution are rescinded. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. Now let's open up our discussion and presentation.
Okay. So on page 32 and 33, we've got a narrative of the descriptions of changes here. We originally, in the first draft of the budget, we're projecting like a 1.5 to 2% increase. The equalization report came back and it was actually a 5% increase.
Whoa.
So that is mostly due to new development, new construction. So that was great news for us, but it did mean that our Headley fraction was impacted again. So for next year, our maximum allowable millage under the Headley amendment is 1.8228 mils, down from 1.8333 mils.
Say that one more time.
1.8228 mils. And that is down from 1.8333 mils. However, that's still expected to bring in more revenue than we had last year. It's basically about $1 million more of tax collections that we're expecting. And that is a very good situation to be in. All of our other revenue lines are basically unchanged or have been modified to kind of match what our experience has been. You can see penal fines is pretty much staying the same. State aid is staying the same. MEPSR's pass-through, that's lower because we've had a retirement. So we don't have as many MEPSR's people left. And then you can also see the copier revenue. We're only expecting 25,000 from copier. That's basically based on what we've had now. Now that we only charge if you print more than 30 pages, there's a lot less volume there. And that's really been a big success for everyone involved. Grants and memorials, we generally don't expect to receive a lot of money there. Then you can see non-resident fees, the Sweetwater's rent, and other income. So with all of that, the major differences in our expenses, salaries and wages is all of our current salaries plus some new positions, and it all includes a 3% merit increase again. That will mean we have done a 3% merit increase every year since 2011, if I recall correctly. There were 2 years during the last recession that we didn't do it. But since then, it has been 3% every year. That includes our benefits. We are expecting about a 3-4%. As we talked about a little bit in committee, we did have to make one small change to the benefits this year based on provider network to keep cost increases under control. That did not affect a large number of staff, but some staff were certainly affected by that. Mostly because Michigan Medicine does not participate in our PCP provider network. So some people had to choose a new doctor or buy up to the optional plan that would allow them to continue to see it. And then most of this is pretty routine as far as things aren't really changed. One big difference is the materials budget. We're adjusting that to what we have actually been spending, where it's much more limited by our actual throughput than it is limited by dollars. And particularly a lot of that growth over years had been in video, and the video market is changing very quickly. There's a lot of things that are no longer released on disc. Some DVDs are harder to find, and a lot of most popular shows are not even being released onto those formats. Also, as you can imagine, the CD market is very, very different than it was even 3-4 years ago. A lot fewer things are being released. So what we've done is adjust the materials budget basically to what we have been spending for the past several years. So it's more of a right sizing. It is not actually a cut to that. And also it was to primarily make room for the biggest change here is the increase of capital outlays from $450,000 last year to $1.35 million this year, an increase of about $900,000. And that is primarily for new furniture and equipment out of the plaza. So it will be very easy next year after we get most of this stuff. If we get to the end of the year and we need more money in the materials budget, it'll be very easy to put it there from there. So this is not one of those one-time cuts that will be impossible to undo. It's more like it's an adjustment that we have lots of options if it turns out that we actually run out and we need more. So those are the main highlights across the budget. Anyone have any questions about the budget proposal?
It's my perennial question, which is why grants and memorials shows up as an expense, but is it always to match the grants and memorials?
Yeah, it's supposed to match the grants and memorials across the other side, but it's been hard.
Clean accounting, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's it is something that we do want to discuss with the auditors and see if there's a better way to do it, because it does not match for this year, because we're still having we also have some residual. There's some money that are still in some of those funds that we have spent from year to year. Usually for things like summer game prizes. So the fact that is, we're only expecting 10,000, but it's likely that more than that will come in.
Yeah, I see.
So we're trying to make sure, and this is also, with the assumption that we receive no revenue from the Friends,
Got it.
which, who knows if that will be the case this year or
They're
not.
kind of spinning back up again.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Other questions about budget? I know you all have, many of you have already worked on this pretty closely, so.
All my questions were answered.
Terrific. Okay, well then, let's have a vote. All in favor of approving this budget, please say yes.
Yes.
All right. And any opposed? Great, well, the budget passes. Hurrah. All right. Next, we have a resolution to authorize the millage rate to be levied by taxing authorities. The board resolves as follows, that as to the 2022-2023 fiscal year of the Ann Arbor District Library, and as to that portion of said library within the city of Ann Arbor, and that portion of the library within the territory, townships, or areas outside the city of Ann Arbor, the voted millage for library operational purposes shall be the amount of 1.8228 mills. That the foregoing amounts are levied by the Ann Arbor District Library, and the Secretary of the Board of Trustees is authorized and directed to report the same as the library tax levy to the proper assessing officers of the appropriate agencies, and the Secretary may provide copies of this resolution when requested by any appropriate agency. That the amounts certified are essential for the fiscal year of the Ann Arbor District Library commencing July 1st, 2022, except as subsequently altered or amended by appropriate certification. That a certified copy of this resolution may be issued as though the original with the certification provided, and that all resolutions and parts of resolutions that conflict with the provisions of this resolution are rescinded. Motion to approve this resolution.
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion.
This is just voting to do the most mills that we can do, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. We must vote every year to decide how much to levy within our given range, from 0 to 100%.
What would 100% be?
It's what we're doing right now.
Yes.
No,
2 mills was what the original vote was. Because of the Headley Amendment
Yeah.
rollbacks, 1.8228 is the maximum that we can currently.
It is the maximum,
right.
yes.
Right, but 2 was the answer.
Yeah. There have been times in which we have not levied the maximum in a given year, depending on what the financial needs were, the financial context. So that is an option. All right. Anything else on this one? All in favor? Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? None. All right. Who would like to read the resolution to adopt the 22-23 budget as a line item budget and compliance of disbursements? Do you want to do a read around? Shall we go clockwise here? I'll start. The board, be it resolved that appropriations by the board, as a legislative body of the library, the board hereby appropriates for the fiscal year 22-23 the total amount of $19,192,500 for the expenditure categories set forth in the budget.
Disbursements for payroll and related payroll taxes and withholdings, as provided by the Uniform Accounting Procedures Manual of the Department of Treasury, the Director of the Library, the Associate Directors of the Library, or Senior Human Resources Specialist of the Library, each as authorized officer, are hereby authorized to provide for the disbursement of library funds for payroll, including related payroll taxes and withholdings, provided such disbursements are within the budgeted amounts set forth in the approved budget.
Disbursements for recurring expenses that are necessary to avoid finance of the late charges as provided by the Uniform Accounting Procedures Manual of the Department of Treasury, each authorized officer is hereby authorized to provide for the disbursement of library funds for payments that are for recurring expenses and are necessary to avoid finance or late charges such as payments for utilities, equipment leases, and similar expenses, provided such disbursements are within the budgeted amounts set forth in the approved budget.
Disbursements for appropriated amounts as provided by the Uniform Accounting Procedures Manual of the Department of Treasury. Each authorized officer is hereby authorized to provide for the disbursement of library funds for expenditures that have been previously appropriated by the board pursuant to paragraph number 1 of this resolution, provided such disbursements are within the budgeted amounts set forth in the approved budget.
Presentation of disbursements to the library board. All disbursements made pursuant to the authority of this resolution must be presented to the library board for approval at a subsequent board meeting.
Limitation of disbursements to $33,000. Notwithstanding any provision to the contrary in this resolution, no authorized officer shall be allowed to approve any single expenditure in excess of $33,000 unless the expenditure has been previously approved in a resolution by the library board or in an agreement authorized by the library board.
7, requirement for dual signatures. Nothing in this resolution shall be construed as modifying the current library board policy that requires 2 authorized signatures on all checks, excluding payroll checks in the amount of $2,500 or more.
Prior resolutions. All resolutions and parts of resolutions insofar as they conflict with the provisions of this resolution are hereby rescinded.
Thank you, everyone. Can we hear a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved?
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right, discussion. This is about our financial controls and our obligations for reporting. One question that I wanted, or I guess 2 questions I want to just check in on are 6 and 7.
Yes.
And if you are feeling like the limits are still reasonable, given.
I think that's fine. Yeah, it's a policy. There's a library policy that references that number based on the CPI. But it's a very manageable number because it's a reasonable place for the line between routine things and less routine things.
Yeah.
And generally, if we have brought you a resolution to authorize a project, it is understood that the project that you authorize will include some bills that are above that won't be brought back to the board. Like, for example, we will be bringing the big bid packs to the board for the plaza project that you have already authorized. However, we won't be bringing smaller things that aren't necessarily sent out to bid, but still may be over $33,000 because you have approved the project budget as a whole.
All right.
And the reason that we have to do this is because the alternative is for y'all to approve every disbursement. So this as a line item budget means that you don't have to do that.
Terrific. All right. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Great. All in favor?
Yes.
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 Any opposed? All right, resolution passes, and we have a budget, and we have a millage rate, and we have our line item budget, and I believe that takes care of all of our budget business for the new fiscal year. So congratulations, everyone. Okay, moving right along. We have a resolution in front of us to authorize Director Nyberger as designated officer on TCM Bank business credit card. We're following up here. This is transition business ultimately with Eli's appointment and Josie's retirement. So board resolves that the Ann Arbor District Library apply for and obtain a business credit card account, that each account obtained be issued 1 card embossed with the name of the designated business officer or employee that sales drafts and other instruments of charges be signed by the designated officer or employee shall be valid and binding upon the Ann Arbor District Library, that any of the following officers of this organization are empowered to authorize TCM Bank NA to make any type of changes to this business account. that Director Eli Nyberger be designated as the sole authorized officer on this account, that Board President Jim Leha be authorized to sign TCM Bank NA documents acknowledging this resolution, and that all resolutions and parts of resolutions that conflict with the provisions of this resolution are rescinded. May I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, and a second?
Second.
Thank you, and discussion, questions? All right. All in favor?
Yes.
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 Any opposed? None. All right. Hurrah.
You? And this is so that we can close Josie's credit card.
Which we ought to do at this
Yes.
point.
It's in the safe, but we should close it.
All right, and that brings us back around to revision of the 3.1, policy 3.1 on circulation. We don't need to act on this tonight if we don't want to, but I want to, so I'm going to say, why don't you talk about the revision, and then we can read the resolution if we decide we want to take
Okay.
action tonight.
So on the page labeled 45 in your packet is the only change to this existing policy, the circulation policy 3.1. So under 3.1P, the proposal is to eliminate the two struck out lines above the sort of table of fees. One removed line would be fines are calculated from the date due, and the other line would be fines cannot be collected before an item is renewed or returned. Both of those are just kind of very specific to how you calculate overdue fees, and also they are kind of in recognition of the limitations of systems that we were 2 systems ago. So we no longer need to have either of those in this policy. The real meat here is to remove the tools line and the all other materials line from the table of daily fines, leaving only the tools reservations can have a daily fine of up to $50 or with a maximum of the cost of the item. And this is just in the event with our new tools reservation service, which is on the verge of launching. We should have that within the next couple weeks. When that's out, it's like a rental, right? There's no charge, but if you don't bring it back on time, you're ruining someone else's wedding. So the catch is to make sure that we have strong of an incentive to get those back on time as possible. I don't anticipate it's going to be a real big deal because when you check out a giant chess set, it's 4 enormous bags in your house and you are bringing them back as soon as you are done with them. So, but we want to have that flexibility to charge that in case we want to. And like, is in any other case, we're going to be as forgiving and understanding as we always were with overdue fees, but there may be some cases in which we need to rattle that sword or make that charge to get items to come back on time.
Is tools reserved already in the policy? So it's
Yes,
not
this
highlighted?
was, we put that in anticipation of the service launching because we were doing it manually. What's new is a digital service for it.
Okay.
So the only part of the change is the addition of up to, so that it is not necessarily $50 a day, and the removal of the other 2 lines, so that there would be no, it says in the policy, there would be no overdue fees on any items other than reserved tools.
Got it.
And that's it for the changes to this.
And we leave 3.10 in place because there still are fees that you can get on tools specifically.
Well, and also if you're billed, if you have not returned something and it is 45 days overdue, you are billed for the replacement
Got
cost
it.
of that
Okay.
item. So that does not block your card unless the total of your bills is over $25.
Great. Yeah.
Is there any sort of communications plan for this? Because we're basically getting rid of fines for the most part, and that's like a story people have been telling and hearing lately.
Yeah, so we're bringing, I mean, that's a good question, but we're also bringing our policy in alignment with the practice that we've been doing for,
2 years.
2 years
Okay,
at this
yeah.
point. So
I had to say, we hadn't planned on it. Usually when, most of the communication that you see about that from other libraries is because they're obfuscating other changes that they're making compensation for this. Many libraries at the time that they are removing overdue fees are shortening the period of time before you're billed. We're not making any other compensatory changes to this. And as I said, there's some utility to people assuming that the library's charging fees if it gets them to bring their stuff back on time. And also, we prefer to have those positive moments one-on-one. When someone says, oh my gosh, I'm trapped overseas, I can't believe it. It's like, it's okay, there's no fees anymore. We just made their day, more so than any press release could. So we hadn't really planned on a communications push in association with this. 1, because it's kind of old news. 2, because it's still kind of useful if people assume it. And 3, because those things one-on-one are so much more impactful than sort of communications push would be. Does that address your concerns?
It does, thanks.
So in the slide that you showed us, it looked like the number of things that were late were actually less.
For
Is that
things that are
correct?
long overdue is less, but that's also because we've recently resumed doing the collection agency at all. That it used to be that there was no, you'd get your bill and that was that. And no, you'd never get a nasty, well, it's not even nasty. The service calls it a gentle nudge. That's the company, they call it the gentle nudge approach. It's trademarked, you better believe it. So it used to be that you would not even get a notification that you might be sent to collections. So a lot of that has been, well, and also mixed up in all of this is the pandemic and where you are in the pandemic and coming out of the pandemic and all that kind of stuff. So I think in many cases, a year ago, we still had a lot of people that were sitting on materials that we weren't yet billing them for. Whereas now we've resumed billing for long overdue materials and also referring to collections. And you get a notice when your balance is over $25, that if your balance is over $25 for more than 45 days, you'll be sent to collections. That has been bringing a lot of material back.
Okay.
So, but you can see it's a little bit more, the stuff that is overdue less than 45 days is a little bit more than it was before. So we are seeing that there's a slightly higher percentage of things that are 1 to 2 weeks and 2 to 6 weeks overdue. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, because it looked like it actually was less on that chart.
Let's
But
go
it's
back to that.
because-
You guys want to bring the slides back up? And this would be like
So,
the
but so
third
what you're
slide.
saying is it is slightly higher.
At the beginning.
Yes. So you can see they're going down. You can see it went from 26 to 27%.
Right,
But
so
then it went
that's
from
1%
3% to 5%. Oh, no, I'm sorry, 8, I don't have my glasses on. 8% to 5%. So, but that is versus 2021. If we
Right,
compare this,
If you go look at like,
why don't you guys go to the very last slide on the deck? I was prepared for this. Well, back one, down one more. One more. Keep going. Oh, go down. Yeah, sorry. Keep going. One more. One more. And one more. There we go. All right. So here we compare it to 2019. Okay. If you see versus 2019, so you just compare the first column to the third column, can see it went from 20% to 27%. Overdue 1 to 2 weeks went from 3% to 5%. 2 to 6 weeks went from 2% to 4%. But overdue 6 weeks went down a little bit from 0.8 to 0.7. So you can see there is an impact. But I'm very wary to compare anything to old world data, because so many things have changed about the way that people use the library. Most notably, you can see fewer people. 24,000 people used the library in April 2019. Check that an item.
yeah,
18,000 in 2022.
something that you had mentioned at some point, and I don't remember when, was trying different communication strategies around
Yes.
this. Are you thinking about that?
That's
'Cause
how the notification that your balance is over $25 and you may be sent to collections in 45 days if you don't resolve it is one example of that. That's not something that we ever did before. So that is new, just saying, hey, you can't use a library right now. Because especially for casual users and they check out one thing and they forget about it entirely and they're not trying to use the library, they would have no awareness until that collection agency letter arrived. And that's not the way we want to do it. We want to make sure that they hear from us repeatedly before the gentle nudge arrives. So that is an example of that, but we also want to try, now that this is really rolling, saying, hey, this thing, people are waiting for this, that kind of thing, and using some different strategies there. We're also on the verge of bringing back the newsletter and some new technology there that will make it easier for us to test different types of messages. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I very much support getting rid of the fines. That, to me, seeing this, that, there's still very low percentage of people that are not turning things in after 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Overdue. I mean, that's really low. But I do like the idea of playing around with different strategies for communication. You know what I mean? Like I often request really popular novels, right? So it's like, if you could say, there are 375 people waiting for this book,
Yes.
right? Like,
Leverage the psychic weight of the hold queue. Yeah.
right, yeah, like just that like social, right, like responsibility kind of messaging
You know, one of the
makes-
things that
makes
we've
sense to
thought
me.
about with that, which is a very similar sort of situation, is this impacts people the most when we have a small number of copies of something and then there's only 2 people waiting and the person who has it out completely forgot about it. That's the situation we'd like to say, hey, you've got our only copy and someone else has been waiting for 8 months. Think you can bring it back? You know, try out something like that. So I think that's some more sort of context aware as opposed to it being always across the board in all situations. We're excited to try some of that out and see if any of it will be effective.
Yeah, I think that's just an interesting question to see what is effective.
I have a question regarding communication about this. So if we understand late fines to be somewhat of a barrier to access to some people, then wouldn't we want to make the information known? Or where does that barrier come into play?
Well, where we start to do that is in our brochures and on our onboarding, you know, where it does become a message that is a routine part of it. That it's like in the new Welcome to Your Library brochure, there's never a fee on overdue items, those kinds of things. So it is more sort of like targeted at patrons. And I think we could do some in the newsletter as well. I'm wary of a press release, mostly because it's not that newsy, you know, but it's not out of the question. If it's something that you all feel strongly about, it's something that we could certainly consider. I think that's always been sort of the challenge, is how do you break through people's impressions of what the library is, right? And in many cases, that happens, like I said, the best across the desk and saying to them, here's your new card. Don't worry about fees. Here's how it works, and explaining how that all works at that time.
Yeah, you know, I don't know. I mean, I had the same reaction too, which is the sort of like you want the message to reach people for whom like the perceptional idea of like the library, you know, the collection agency's coming for me, or like I've got these, you know, like that's sort of the other story that we hear about fines, right? Like I can't afford to pay them, or you know, economic hardship, whatever. And you know, I think it's actually a good topic to kind of bring back to sort of your DEI brain trust here, to think a little bit about how that message gets kind of, you know, refracted through the prism of different segments of our, you know, patron base, essentially. And I actually don't know what, like, if I click on fines on the website, what I'm going to see, if I'm going to see a policy that looks like this, which is very scary and undigestible, versus something like this could be an occasion for just like rethinking whatever the public confronts when they are confronted with the idea of fines, or like just searching for what it means. It could be something, and not knowing what it is, I don't know.
Well, and we have recently updated that page, which is the cards page, which is not a policy page. It is kind of a
just colloquial information.
Colloquial information to say that there are no fees on anything. And it's something that people often search for, and it's hard to search for when it doesn't exist. You know, where it's like they're searching what is the fine level, and the word fines doesn't appear in any of those pages.
But maybe,
anymore,
but I
right?
think it might.
So it's helpful.
That's something to think about. It's like, you know, especially if a person has a perceptional barrier to access that, you know, they're going to look for that word specifically.
So would you like us to bring back some ideas about how to look into that for next month, or how would you like us to proceed? Because we're happy to.
If you'd like to, you have our feedback though, so we trust you to take it and run with it and implement it whatever fashion you deem appropriate.
Okay.
But I think that's it's a good point, you know, just in terms of like, who do you want the message to reach?
Well, and it's something that we wrestle with, of course.
I know.
Because it's, you know, there's both approaches have merits, and but I think that overall we would probably rather make sure that people's presuppositions about the pain of using the library are, you know, disposed of, as opposed to getting the material back all the time.
And I'd like to publicly apologize to whomever is waiting for The Art of Gathering, which is sitting on my desk at home. Overdue. Sorry. I'm like, where's the camera? Sorry. So do you want to read the resolution? Do you all want some more time to think about it?
I'm fine to pass it now.
Yeah. All right, the board resolves that circulation policy 3.1 is revised as proposed and that all resolutions and parts of resolutions that conflict with the provisions of this resolution are rescinded. Motion.
So moved.
Thank you.
Seconded.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All right then. All in favor?
Yes.
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 Any opposed? None. All right, motion passes. Before we move on to our last item, I do want to mention that I have been, I think I mentioned this before too, but maybe I haven't. I've been working with Jim Green to reach a final version of an employment contract for Eli. Eli is reviewing the contract now. We have a couple of little things to kind of work through, but my hope is to bring the contract to all of you to review and then to approve in a meeting. Jim did recommend to me that even though the search committee had the authority to make an offer and hire, that it would be in our best interest to approve the contract as a full board, so it's all watertight, as it were. So hopefully we will do that in our June meeting. I think we'll be in good position to do that. And there shouldn't be anything unexpected or controversial about the contract. And it's really a formality, and then it will go into effect July 1st. And we can discuss it at the next meeting. All right. That takes us to a vote for closed session. Can I hear a motion for closed session at the June 27th, 2022 regular board meeting for discussion of real estate and labor negotiations?
So moved.
That was,
Me.
or I can't see mouths. Thank you.
Seconded.
Thank you. All right. Any discussion?
6 o'clock?
6 p.m. Yes. This is a roll call vote.
Yes.
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 Sounds like the motion passes. All right, so we'll see you all for closed session again next month. And have we any citizens' comments?
None online.
All right, great. Well, that was a lot of business in a little amount of time. This meeting is adjourned.